Imagine this. You are walking across an ancient savanna, not in the company of lions, not under the watch of elephants, but beside creatures so massive that the ground trembles when they move. Towering beasts with tusks longer than a man's body, predators whose claws gleam like daggers, birds taller than you, flightless and fierce. And there you are, one of the lost humans, small, fragile, yet alive in a world of giants. Before we dive deeper, I want you to pause for a moment. Ask yourself, how did humans survive in such a world? How did our fragile ancestors, barefoot, weaponless, without steel or firepower, stand against titans that could crush them in an instant? That's the mystery we're going to unravel tonight. But before we begin our journey, let me ask you something important. If you love these hidden, forgotten chapters of human history, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. Comment below. Do you think we could survive if giants still roamed the earth today? I'll be reading your answers. Now, let's step back into the deep past, where humanity wasn't alone. There were others, other kinds of humans, some strong, some strange, some nearly lost to memory. They walked with us, sometimes competing, sometimes mixing, sometimes vanishing forever. And they didn't walk in a quiet world. They walked with giants. The first lost humans we'll meet are Homo floresiensis, the so-called hobbits of Flores Island. Standing barely over 3 feet tall, they weren't giants, but they lived beside them. Massive Komodo dragons, giant storks taller than any human alive today, and giant rats that scurried across the forests. Now picture the contrast. Tiny humans, no bigger than a child, hunting, gathering, surviving, while lizards longer than buses prowled their shores. How did they endure? How did they not only survive, but thrive, carving out their own corner of existence in a dangerous world? That is where our story begins. The world of giants, the Ice Age world, was nothing like the one we know today. Think of it as Earth on steroids. Animals grew enormous. The air was colder, the vegetation richer in places, and ecosystems encouraged gigantism. Mammoths, mastodons, and woolly rhinos roamed the plains. Saber-toothed cats with teeth longer than your hand stalked the shadows. And towering birds, like the terror birds of South America, ruled with beaks sharp enough to pierce bone. But here's the chilling truth. Humans weren't always at the top of the food chain. Far from it. We were prey as often as we were predators. The lost humans who lived then didn't just have to survive hunger or cold. They had to survive being hunted. Imagine being chased not just by wolves, but by dire wolves. Beasts twice the size of modern ones, with bone-crushing jaws. Imagine facing a cave lion, the largest cat that has ever lived. 3 times stronger than any lion today. This was the backdrop for humanity's rise. Our ancestors didn't inherit the earth peacefully. They fought tooth and nail for it, in a brutal game where the stakes were life or extinction. Yet somehow they endured. And that endurance, this strange persistence of fragile humans in a monstrous world, is perhaps the greatest miracle of all. The giants we walked beside, let's list some of the giants. The Columbian mammoth, standing over 13 feet tall, weighing up to 10 tons. The megatherium, the giant ground sloth, a peaceful vegetarian but towering over 20 feet when it stood upright. The Prehistoric, a rhino-like beast considered the largest land mammal to ever walk the earth, as tall as a 2-story building. Now, imagine standing next to one of these creatures as a human just 5 or 6 feet tall. You'd feel like an ant beside a skyscraper. And yet our ancestors weren't merely terrified. They learned from these animals. They observed. They adapted. Fossil evidence suggests early humans scavenged from giant carcasses, stripping meat from mammoths that died in river crossings, or breaking bones for marrow. In time, they turned to hunting. Not always successfully, but often enough to leave behind mammoth bone huts, mammoth ivory tools, and cave paintings celebrating the hunt. But here's the eerie part. Alongside Homo sapiens were others. Neanderthals, Denisovans, Flores hobbits, Luzon hobbits, and perhaps even species we haven't yet uncovered. These weren't our giants, but they were human giants in their own way, each one adapted to survive beside monstrous animals in their own landscapes. The prey that hunted back, we think of humans as hunters, but in the world of giants we were often hunted. Consider the saber-toothed cats. With their enormous canines, they weren't just predators, they were ambush specialists. Fossils show that many prehistoric humans bore injuries consistent with big cat attacks. Cave paintings even suggest fearsome encounters, where humans depicted themselves as prey, not masters. Then there were giant crocodiles, like Crocodylus thorbjarnarsoni, stretching over 25 feet, lurking in African rivers. To get water was to risk your life. And let's not forget the terror birds, flightless predators in South America standing up to 10 feet tall. They could sprint faster than a man and kill with a single strike of their hooked beak. For any human living nearby, there was no safety in the open plains. So how did we survive? Strategy. Humans learned to think ahead, to use fire as a shield, to wield sharpened stones, to move in groups, to coordinate. While the giants had size and strength, we had something invisible but stronger: intelligence. The vanished companions, here's the haunting part. Many of the giants are gone now. Mammoths, saber-tooths, terror birds, all extinct, and alongside them many of the lost humans are gone too. The hobbits of Flores, the Denisovans, even the mighty Neanderthals. It's almost as if their fates were intertwined. When the giants disappeared, so did many of the humans who once walked beside them. Climate change, overhunting, disease, all played a role. But what remains is mystery. What does it mean that we, the last humans, are the only ones left? Were we the most adaptable, the most ruthless, or simply the luckiest? And if giants had survived, would we have survived with them? This is the paradox at the heart of the story. Humans, fragile yet enduring, outliving beasts that once seemed indestructible. But our journey is only beginning. In the next chapters, we'll uncover the lost humans one by one, and the giants they called neighbors. Fire against the darkness, picture yourself as a Neanderthal, crouched in the mouth of a cave. Outside, night has fallen. The wind carries the howls of wolves, dire wolves, bigger and stronger than any wolf alive today. Somewhere in the distance, the roar of a cave lion echoes, so deep and powerful it rattles your chest. You're not the apex predator here. You're a potential meal. And yet in your hand you hold something miraculous. A torch. Fire. A flame so small it could be extinguished with a single breath, yet so powerful it terrifies even the fiercest of beasts. This was humanity's equalizer. Fire kept the giants at bay. It let us survive nights we shouldn't have survived. It allowed us to roast meat, making calories easier to digest, fueling our growing brains. It hardened wooden spears, turning them into weapons strong enough to pierce the hide of mammoths. Fire was more than warmth. It was strategy, community, safety, and courage. But here's where the mystery deepens. Fire didn't belong only to us. Neanderthals mastered it too. Some evidence even suggests other lost humans, like Denisovans, used it. This means entire branches of humanity stood together against the giants, wielding flames against the dark. And yet, despite fire, many of these humans disappeared, which raises the question, was fire enough? Or were the giants of nature and the giants of fate simply too overwhelming? The shadows of Denisova deep in the Altai Mountains of Siberia lies a cave. Cold, dark, and unremarkable, until you look closer. Archaeologists found something extraordinary there. A finger bone, a tooth, fragments so tiny you could hold them on your palm. They didn't belong to us. They didn't belong to Neanderthals. They belonged to Denisovans, a mysterious branch of humanity we barely understand. And here's the eerie thing. They lived with giants too. From the woolly mammoth herds of the Siberian plains to the cave bears that weighed over half a ton. Denisovans carved out survival in one of the harshest, most dangerous environments on Earth. We know almost nothing about them. No skeletons, no faces, just DNA whispering from the bones. But their genetic legacy is inside some of us. If you're from parts of Asia, Oceania, or the Pacific Islands, you might carry Denisovan blood. Think about that. Somewhere in your ancestry, your family line touched theirs. These lost humans didn't vanish entirely. They live on in us, hidden like a ghost in our genes. What stories would they tell of the giants they faced? What fears, what triumphs, what moments of firelight in the endless dark? The hobbits of Flores, now let's shrink the story down. Not all lost humans were towering hunters with bulging muscles. Some were small, very small. On the island of Flores in Indonesia lived Homo floresiensis, nicknamed the hobbits. Barely over 3 feet tall, with brains a third the size of ours, they seemed fragile compared to Neanderthals or Denisovans. But don't underestimate them. They lived on an island ruled by giants. Giant Komodo dragons, giant storks, giant rats. Imagine a tiny human, spear in hand, facing off against a lizard longer than a bus. It sounds impossible. Yet somehow, they survived. For tens of thousands of years, they carved out an existence on Flores. Proof that survival isn't always about size. Sometimes it's about adaptability. But then, they vanished. The timing of their disappearance eerily coincides with the arrival of us. Homo sapiens. Did we outcompete them? Did we destroy them? Or did the environment shift, stranding them against forces they couldn't overcome? The hobbits remind us of a haunting truth. Not all humans made it to the present. For every success story, there are shadows of failure, of species that once thrived, but now exist only in bone and memory. Neanderthals, brothers and rivals of all the lost humans. Neanderthals are the ones we know best. Stocky, strong, and resilient, they were perfectly built for the Ice Age. Barrel-chested, with powerful muscles, their bones show strength far beyond our own. If you put a Neanderthal in a modern gym, they'd lift weights like a powerlifter without even training. But Neanderthals didn't just survive with brute strength. They were skilled hunters, cooperative, and perhaps even spiritual. They buried their dead, made jewelry, and painted caves. In many ways, they weren't so different from us. And yet, they lived among giants too. The woolly rhinoceros, the steppe bison, and the cave bear were constant threats. A single mistake on the hunt meant death. Many Neanderthal bones show signs of crushing injuries. Broken ribs, fractured skulls, shattered arms. Life was brutal. But here's the most fascinating part. They walked with us. Homo sapiens and Neanderthals shared the same lands for thousands of years. We fought, we loved, we mated. Today, every person of non-African descent carries Neanderthal DNA. They didn't vanish completely. They live on in us. So why did we survive? And they didn't. Was it luck? Was it intelligence? Or was it something darker? Did we take the final step to push them into extinction? Giants of the water, when we think of giants. We picture mammoths or lions. But some of the most terrifying giants lived in the water. Take Megalania, a giant monitor lizard in Australia, growing over 20 feet long. Imagine waiting to collect water, only to feel the ground shake as a reptilian predator slides silently from the shadows. Or the giant crocodiles of Africa, ambushing humans who dared to approach rivers. Even hippopotamuses, seemingly harmless, were massive killers, responsible for countless deaths. In the world of lost humans, water was never safe. And yet humans adapted. We learned to fish, to build rafts, to avoid the most dangerous rivers. Some of the earliest signs of human creativity come from water. Fishhooks, nets, and watercraft that carried us across seas. While giants prowled the rivers, we learned to master them. The water giants remind us of a central theme. The lost humans didn't just endure a dangerous world. They adapted to it. They looked fear in the face and found ways to survive. Imagine the hunt. Imagine this. You and your small band of humans step quietly across the frozen grasslands. The air burns your lungs with every breath. Ahead, a shadow looms, a mammoth towering and massive, tusks curling like ivory scythes. One animal could feed your people for weeks. But one wrong move and it could crush you into the earth. The hunt begins not with courage, but with fear. You know what's at stake. Children waiting for food, elders starving. You grip your spear, its wooden shaft hardened by fire, its stone tip chipped sharp. Beside you, your companions whisper and nod. Communication is minimal. One wrong sound could send the mammoth charging. Now imagine the strategy. The humans weren't foolish. They didn't face giants head-on. They used terrain, traps, and fire. Some herds were driven toward cliffs, the stampede ending in a thunderous fall. Others were cornered near rivers, where mud slowed their escape. Archaeological evidence shows entire bone fields where mammoths fell together, suggesting hunts weren't accidents. They were coordinated attacks. And yet, even with strategy, the risks were staggering. Fossilized bones of early humans tell the story. Shattered legs, broken arms, ribs caved in from a mammoth's furious defense. Some didn't survive the hunts. They became stories whispered in firelight, warnings passed down through generations. So why risk it? Because the reward outweighed the cost. A single mammoth provided meat, fat, bone, and hide. Resources that meant survival through brutal winters. This was the razor's edge our ancestors lived on. A choice between starvation and facing giants. And somehow, through skill and sheer will, they endured. The cave bear's den. Now let's enter a cave. The air is cold, damp and heavy with the smell of earth. Your torchlight flickers across walls scarred by claw marks. The floor crunches under your feet. Not stone, but bones, skulls, ribs, femurs. The remains of giants. You've stepped into the lair of the cave bear. These beasts were no ordinary predators. Standing over 10 feet tall on their hind legs and weighing half a ton, cave bears were both feared and respected. Fossil evidence suggests they hibernated in the same caves humans often sought for shelter. This meant competition was inevitable. Now picture the encounter. You and your group enter a cave seeking refuge from the storm. But in the shadows, the bear stirs. It rises towering, its growl vibrating through your bones. This isn't just survival, it's war for territory. Archaeologists have uncovered fascinating evidence. Some caves show layers of human habitation alternating with bear remains, as though the two species wrestled for ownership across generations. Humans painted walls with symbols and figures. Did they mark their victories, or did they ward off future battles? The cave bear may have been one of the most dangerous giants humanity ever faced. Unlike mammoths, it wasn't a resource, it was a rival. To claim a cave was to risk everything. But without caves, survival in Ice Age winters was nearly impossible. And so humanity fought for shadows, for stone walls, for warmth. Sometimes they won. Sometimes the bear's skull was added to the growing pile of bones. Other times, the humans became bones themselves. Giants of South America. When we think of Ice Age giants, we often imagine Europe or Siberia. But in South America, the story took a stranger turn. Here, humans walked beside creatures that seem almost unbelievable. The Glyptodon, a giant armadillo, the size of a small car, with a shell so thick it could deflect spears. The Macrauchenia, a bizarre long-necked mammal, with the body of a camel and the face of something almost alien. The terror birds, towering predators with bone-shattering beaks. Now imagine stepping into this land as a fragile human. You're surrounded by animals you've never seen before. Each one is massive, each one a potential danger. How do you adapt? Evidence suggests South America was one of the last places humans arrived. But within just a few thousand years, most of these giants were gone. Some scientists argue it was climate change. Others argue it was overhunting. Perhaps it was both. But think about the enormity of that impact. Humans, small, seemingly weak, walked into a land of monsters and walked out the victors. The giants fell and the humans endured. Yet there's something haunting in this. Did the disappearance of the giants also erase the stories of the humans who once faced them? Without the challenge of giants, did we lose part of what made us strong? Whispers in the DNA sometimes, The story of lost humans isn't written in bones or artifacts. It's written in us. Your DNA carries secrets older than history. In every cell, there are fragments from Neanderthals, Denisovans, and perhaps other humans we haven't even discovered yet. These genetic whispers tell us one thing clearly: we didn't just walk beside lost humans. We walked with them. We interbred. We shared stories, fires, and children. For tens of thousands of years, we weren't a single humanity. We were many. Now consider what this means for the giants. Every time we faced them, we didn't face them alone. It wasn't just Homo sapiens against the mammoth. It was a coalition of humankinds, blending skills and strengths. Neanderthals brought strength. Denisovans brought adaptability to high altitudes. Hobbits brought island survival strategies. And together across time, their blood flows in us. The lost humans may be gone, but their survival strategies live on. The way you breathe in thin mountain air? Denisovan. The way your immune system responds to certain pathogens. Neanderthal. We are the last humans standing, but we are not alone. We carry the giants of our own species within us, proof that we never truly walked alone in the age of monsters. The price of survival is never free. Every victory comes at a cost. Think about what it meant to live in a world of giants. Hunger gnawed constantly. Injuries were common. A broken leg from a fall, a bite from a predator, even an infection from a cut could mean death. Average lifespans were short. Children often didn't survive infancy. And yet, humanity continued. But was the price only in suffering, or was it also in blood spilled? Not just of animals, but of other humans. Some evidence suggests our ancestors may have turned on each other when survival grew desperate. In caves, archaeologists have found human bones scarred with cut marks, signs of cannibalism. Were these acts of ritual or of starvation? Did humans eat their dead to survive winters when no mammoth came? It's uncomfortable to imagine, but it shows the razor-thin margin of existence. Survival wasn't guaranteed. It was clawed from the jaws of extinction, and those who lived carried the memory of giants, both animal and human, forward into history. The price was high, but without it we would not be here. Imagine the night sky, imagine this. You're lying on your back in a clearing after a brutal day of hunting. Your muscles ache, your stomach is only half full, and the air is so cold you can see your breath curling into the stars. But above you, the sky is alive. No light pollution, no cities, just millions of stars scattered across black velvet. Now think, how did our ancestors see the night sky? Did they look at Orion's belt and see a hunter? Did they see mammoths in the constellations, or cave bears stalking across the Milky Way? Living among giants shaped not just their bodies, but their minds. When every day was a fight to survive, every night became a time to dream, to explain the chaos of the world. And the giants they faced in life likely became the giants of myth. Some researchers suggest that the first human stories weren't about other people. They were about animals. Carvings and cave art show mammoths, lions, bison, and bears far more often than humans. Perhaps the giants of Earth became the giants of the sky. Perhaps stories of survival became constellations, a way to teach children about danger and strength. So next time you look at the stars, remember, they aren't just dots of light. For our ancestors, they were reminders of the monsters outside the firelight. The predators' shadow humans weren't the only hunters. In fact, for most of history, we weren't even the top predators. Imagine crouching by a river, washing blood from your hands after skinning a hare. You're focused, distracted, and then a shadow falls across the water. You look up, and staring back is a lion twice the size of any alive today. The cave lion. Cave lions, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves. These were the true kings of the Ice Age. They stalked the same prey as humans, hunted the same territories, and saw us as competition. And unlike mammoths, predators didn't just defend themselves, they hunted us. The archaeological record is chilling. Human bones gnawed by lions. Campsites abandoned in a hurry, claw marks gouged into wood. It's a reminder. We weren't always the hunters. Often, we were the hunted. This constant threat forced humans to evolve in unique ways. Fire became more than warmth, it was defense. Spears became longer, sharper, better balanced. Not just for mammoths, but for predators. And cooperation wasn't optional. It was survival. Alone, a human was prey. Together, humans became dangerous. Every lion that stalked us shaped the way we learned to fight back. The predator's shadow was long, but it made us stronger. The lost children. Now let's talk about something more haunting. The lost children of the Ice Age. Archaeologists have uncovered tiny footprints beside larger ones, pressed into ancient mud now hardened into stone. Children walked with their parents across dangerous landscapes, but many never grew up. Infant mortality was brutal. Disease, hunger, predators, cold. And yet, evidence suggests children weren't hidden away. They were part of the journey, part of the tribe. Even in caves with art, children's handprints appear beside adults. Small, fragile, but present. Now here's the strange thing. Some scientists believe that the presence of children made humans more dangerous, because protecting the young meant developing strategies, building stronger communities, and making choices beyond the individual. Mammoths were hunted not just for warriors, but for the babies who needed food. Fires were lit not just for hunters, but for shivering toddlers. The lost children shaped humanity. Their survival, or loss, forced our ancestors to adapt. And even when they didn't make it, their footprints remained, silent reminders of what was at stake. The firekeeper's fire wasn't discovered once. It was discovered over and over. But there was a point, around 800,000 years ago, when fire became more than an accident. It became a tool. Now imagine the job of the firekeeper. In a world without matches, without lighters, without even guaranteed sparks, keeping fire alive was a matter of life and death. One ember could mean survival for an entire tribe. Lose it, and the night became deadly. The firekeeper's role was sacred. Some cultures may have given them special status, even seen them as spiritual figures. They carried embers in bark, guarded flames in caves, and passed the light from generation to generation. And what did fire mean against giants? Everything. Mammoths feared it. Lions kept their distance. Even fellow humans, in conflict, hesitated before attacking a camp ringed with flames. Fire turned fragile humans into apex survivors. It cooked meat, made tools stronger, lit the dark, and gave us the power to turn caves into homes. The giants were stronger, faster, and bigger, but humans held fire. And that made all the difference. The last stand of the giants. Let's fast forward to the twilight of the Ice Age. The world is warming, glaciers retreat, forests spread. Imagine the first encounter. Imagine this. You're part of a small band of hunters, moving silently through tall grass. The air smells of damp earth and your stomach gnaws with hunger. Suddenly, the ground begins to tremble. At first, you think it's thunder. But then you see it, the towering shadow of a woolly mammoth, its tusks gleaming like ivory swords. What do? For our ancestors, this moment defined everything. Stand too close, and you're crushed under tons of muscle. Stay too far, and you starve. These were not ordinary hunts. They were battles between fragile humans and creatures that seemed godlike in size. And yet, time and time again, humans found a way. Through fire strategy and sheer persistence, they did what no other predator dared. They chased giants across icy plains, drove them into pits, and cut them down with stone blades. And every successful hunt was a feast that kept an entire tribe alive for weeks. The first encounter wasn't just about survival. It was about courage. And maybe, just maybe, it was about proving that even the smallest beings could stand against giants. The cave of secrets deep within the earth, hidden in darkness, humans left behind their whispers. Cave paintings, symbols, red ochre handprints pressed against stone. Now here's the mystery. Why did they do it? Why risk crawling into dangerous caves with only flickering torches? leaving marks where few would ever see. Some believe it was ritual, a way of asking the spirits for help in hunts against mammoths and bison. Others think it was teaching, the first classroom where elders told stories to the young. Still others believe it was memory, the only way to record life in a world without writing. But one detail stands out: the animals drawn were almost always giants. Mammoths, bison, lions, rarely humans. It's as if the people themselves didn't matter. What mattered were the giants they lived beside. The caves became their museums, their temples, their history books. And today, when we step inside, we're still walking through their stories. So the question is, what were they trying to tell us? Bones in the ice-frozen lands hold secrets. And in those secrets are the bones of giants. Picture a world where every glacier, every layer of permafrost is a time capsule. Mammoths with flesh still clinging to their bodies. Woolly rhinoceroses preserved with hair intact. Entire ecosystems frozen in silence. For scientists, this is treasure. For our ancestors, it was daily life. They saw creatures collapse in the snow, vanish under ice, and sometimes reappear years later. Imagine stumbling upon the body of a frozen mammoth. Massive, strange, half buried in ice. Would it seem dead or merely sleeping? Legends may have grown from these encounters. Tales of beasts that never truly died, waiting under the earth to return. And perhaps that's why so many ancient myths speak of sleeping giants, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Bones in the ice weren't just remains, they were reminders. Proof that giants walked among humans and might one day walk again. The war for territory giants weren't just prey, they were rivals. Think about it. Mammoths trampled forests to find food. Bison thundered across plains in herds of thousands. And humans? They wanted the same land, the same resources. Conflict was inevitable. Where giants roamed, humans had to adapt. They built traps, fire lines, and even entire hunting grounds designed to steer herds into narrow passages. At sites like Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, archaeologists found mammoth bone dwellings, whole huts made from the remains of these colossal beasts. Imagine living in the very skeleton of the giant you once hunted. The war for territory wasn't always a direct fight. Sometimes it was a war of patience, of outlasting, of simply being more adaptable. Giants could not change, but humans could. And that adaptability is why the giants are gone, and why we are still here. The first myths of giants: close your eyes and imagine the first campfire stories. A circle of flickering flames, shadows dancing on cave walls, and voices rising in hushed awe. What were those stories about? Giants. Think of it. When every day you faced creatures taller than trees and heavier than stones, how could they not enter your imagination? Myths of mammoths, thunderous bison, and saber-toothed lions may have been the first religion, spirits of power and danger that shaped human belief. Even today, myths of giants echo across cultures. Norse legends of frost giants, Native American tales of mammoths as earthshakers, ancient Indian stories of massive elephants tied to the gods. Were these echoes just coincidence? Or were they memories of real creatures passed down through time? The first myths weren't about kings or heroes. They were about survival, about giants who ruled the land, and the fragile humans who dared to challenge them. Imagine the first step into the unknown. Imagine this. You and your people stand at the edge of a vast plain, a sea of golden grass stretching farther than your eyes can see. The wind carries the scent of animals, thousands of them, each larger than anything you've ever faced. You're not stepping into safety. You're stepping into the territory of giants. This moment was repeated countless times across prehistory. From Africa to Europe, from Asia to the Americas, humans walked into worlds already ruled by colossal beasts. Step by step, they crossed rivers where crocodiles longer than canoes lurked. They climbed mountains shadowed by cave lions. They wandered plains where mammoths stirred the dust with every step. It must have felt like trespassing, like small, fragile beings tiptoeing across the land of gods. But here's the twist. Those gods bled. They fell. And little by little humans learned they could challenge them. That first step into the unknown wasn't just migration. It was a declaration. Humanity was not going to avoid giants. Humanity was going to live with them, fight them, and outlast them. Fire against the giants. If there was one tool that gave humans an edge against giants, it wasn't the spear, it wasn't the bow, it was fire. Picture this: a herd of mammoths grazing peacefully. Then smoke, flames, the air thickens. The ground shakes as they panic, stampeding into carefully planned traps or over cliffs. No stone weapon could slay a dozen mammoths in minutes, but fire could. Fire was the great equalizer. It protected camps at night from saber-tooths, hyenas, and cave bears. It hardened spear points, turning fragile wood into deadly weapons. It even cooked food, giving humans more energy from the same meal than raw flesh ever could. And here's something fascinating. Some archaeologists believe fire wasn't just a tool. It was a weapon of intimidation. Imagine a band of humans carrying torches into the dark, their shadows multiplied on cave walls. To predators, they didn't look like fragile creatures. They looked like giants themselves. So while other animals feared the dark, humans carried their own sun. Fire didn't just help them survive giants. It made them giants in their own right. When giants fell, there's a story hidden in the bones of the earth. A story of giants falling. Take the woolly mammoth. For hundreds of thousands of years, it was untouchable, towering, armored in fur, with tusks sharp enough to gore even the fiercest predators. And yet, by the time humans spread into its range, the mammoth began to vanish. Coincidence? Maybe not. At sites across Siberia and North America, archaeologists find kill sites. Mammoth bones cracked open for marrow, tusks removed, meat stripped away. But here's the darker detail. They find too many of them, far more than humans could eat at once. It suggests overhunting, not just survival. Imagine the scene. A whole herd of mammoths brought down, their bodies left behind because the tribe couldn't carry all the meat. Wasteful, yes, but also a sign of something new, dominance. Humans were no longer just surviving alongside giants. They were tipping the balance. When giants fell, the world changed, and humans rose. Giants of the sea, we often pictured giants on land. Mammoths, bison, saber-tooths. But the seas had their titans too. Imagine standing on a rocky coast 50,000 years ago. The waves crash, and in the distance, something enormous surfaces. A whale. To us, whales are rare, almost mythical, but to our ancestors, they were opportunities. Whales stranded on beaches provided more food than any other single source in the prehistoric world. Fat for fire, bone for tools, meat for feasts. Some tribes may have followed whale migration routes, hoping for strandings. Others learned to craft boats and spears, daring to hunt them directly. But the ocean had dangers too. Giant sharks like Megalodon may have vanished millions of years earlier, but massive predatory whales still haunted the waters. Even seals and walruses were far larger and fiercer than most humans expected. To live by the sea was to live beside giants, just as terrifying as those on land. And yet humans learned the tides, the currents, the patterns. They turned the sea's giants from threats into resources. The giants in our memory, here's a thought. What if giants never really left us? Not in bone or flesh, but in memory. Every culture, from Norse legends of frost giants to Native American tales of thunderous mammoths, tells stories of colossal beings. They're described as terrifying, powerful, almost divine. But look closer, and you see hints of reality. Giants that shook the ground when they walked. Giants with tusks like trees. Giants who ruled the land before humans. These myths are not fantasy. They're memories of real encounters, passed down across thousands of generations. The storytellers may not have known the science, but they knew the awe. They knew the fear. They knew what it was to look up and see a shadow that blotted out the sky. So maybe the giants never died. Maybe they live on in the stories we tell, in the legends we whisper, and in the awe we still feel when we stand beside the skeleton of a mammoth in a museum. Because once we walked with giants, and we never forgot. Imagine the night beside giants. Imagine this. The night is colder than anything you've ever felt. The stars are sharp, glittering like shards of ice, and the only warmth comes from a fragile campfire. Your tribe huddles close, every crackle of the flames swallowed by the vast silence of the Ice Age. Then, boom, the ground shakes. A shadow moves at the edge of the firelight. It's not the whisper of a fox or the soft steps of a deer. It's something bigger, much bigger. You peer into the dark and catch the faint outline of a mammoth moving slowly across the plain. Its shape blocks out the stars, its bulk more mountain than animal. For a moment, the fire feels smaller, the tribe feels smaller, and your place in the world feels insignificant. This was the nightly reality of our ancestors. They lived not at the top of the food chain, but at the fragile bottom, surrounded by colossal neighbors. Cave lions prowled the edges of camps. Hyenas with bone-crushing jaws lingered, waiting for scraps. Mammoths grazed like silent shadows, and woolly rhinoceroses could charge without warning. The question wasn't, will we eat tomorrow? It was, will we survive the night? And yet they did, night after night for thousands of years. That survival was the foundation of the human story. The art of outsmarting giants. Giants were powerful. Humans were weak. On paper, that matchup seems hopeless. And yet, here we are. So how did fragile humans outwit creatures that could crush them with a single step? The answer is strategy. Picture this. A group of hunters doesn't chase a mammoth blindly. Instead, they study the herd for days, watching patterns. Where do they drink water? Where do they rest? Which animal lags behind? The hunt begins long before the first spear is thrown. Then comes the trap. Fires are lit in specific directions, forcing the herd into narrow valleys. Spears rain down from high ground. Pits are dug, lined with sharpened stakes. No single human could take down a giant. But together, with patience and planning, they could rewrite the laws of nature. This wasn't brute force, it was intelligence. And intelligence became humanity's greatest weapon. Think about it. Every time our ancestors outsmarted a giant, they learned a little more about themselves. They weren't the fastest. They weren't the strongest, but they could think ahead. And that one trait, more than anything else, allowed humans to walk alongside giants and eventually outlast them. The feast of a lifetime. Imagine what it meant when a giant finally fell. The air would be thick with the smell of blood and sweat. The mammoth's body, massive and steaming in the cold, would draw every member of the tribe. Spears still stuck in its hide, tusks lying heavy in the snow. For a moment, silence, and then celebration, because this wasn't just food, it was survival secured. A single mammoth could feed dozens of people for weeks. Its fat could be rendered into fuel for fires. Its bones could be carved into shelters, needles, and weapons. Its hide could become clothing or tents. Nothing went to waste. But the feast wasn't just practical, it was spiritual. Imagine the stories told around the fire that night. Children wide-eyed as elders spoke of bravery, of ancestors who faced giants and triumphed. Songs were sung, myths were born, and memories etched deep into the tribe's collective soul. Every feast was more than a meal. It was a ritual of survival, a reminder that even in a world of giants, fragile humans could endure. And those feasts became the foundation of human culture itself. Stories, traditions, and the bonds that tied people together. The children of giants hear something strange. Even though humans fought giants, they also admired them. Some archaeologists suggest that our ancestors may have even considered themselves children of the giants. Why? Because living beside them left a permanent mark on human imagination. Think about myths from across the world. Titans in Greece, frost giants in Norse tales, Rakshasas in India, massive spirit animals in Native American traditions. These weren't invented in a vacuum. They were echoes of reality, whispers of a time when colossal creatures roamed the earth. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. Humans may have learned from giants, Watching how mammoths migrated taught tribes where food and water could be found. Observing lions showed them how to stalk silently, how to move with purpose. Giants weren't just enemies. They were teachers. So maybe the reason giants live on in our myths is because they shaped us in ways we don't fully realize. They weren't just obstacles to survival. They were partners in evolution, pushing us to grow, adapt, and imagine. The Last Giants, every story of giants has an ending. As the Ice Age ended and the world warmed, the great beasts began to vanish. The mammoths retreated to isolated islands. The woolly rhinoceroses disappeared. Saber-tooths fell silent. Slowly, the earth emptied of its titans. But here's the haunting part. Humans were often there at the very end. At sites in North America, mammoth bones are found alongside spear points. Clear signs that humans helped finish what climate change began. Imagine the last hunt. A small herd of mammoths, thinner than before, cornered in a valley. The tribe surrounds them, spears raised. When the final beast falls, silence spreads. No more thunder of tusks. No more shadows across the horizon. The giants are gone. For humans, victory was bittersweet. They had survived, yes. They had conquered a world once ruled by titans, but in doing so, they lost the very creatures that had defined their existence. And perhaps that's why myths of giants linger even now. Because deep down, humans remembered what it was like to live with them, to fear them, to hunt them, to admire them. The last giants may have died thousands of years ago, but in our memory, they never truly left. Imagine the chase across the frozen plains. Imagine this. The sky above is bruised with storm clouds, and the wind howls like a living beast. Across a vast frozen plain, a small band of humans runs. Feet pounding the snow, spears grip tight. Ahead of them, shadows move heavy and slow. A herd of giant steppe bison, their shaggy coats ripple, muscles rolling under layers of fat built to withstand the Ice Age cold. Now pause and think about this. These bison weren't just big, they were colossal. Twice the size of modern cattle, armed with horns that could gore a man straight through. To chase them was madness. And yet our ancestors did it, because to let them escape meant starvation. The chase wasn't reckless. It was strategy in motion. Some hunters flanked the herd, driving them toward narrow valleys where escape would be harder. Others carried fire torches, waving them high to spook the giants into confusion. Imagine the scene. Thundering hooves shaking the ground, snow spraying like foam, hunters yelling in unison to keep the herd moving where they wanted. This wasn't just a hunt, it was theater. A deadly dance between fragile humans and giants who could kill them in seconds. The stakes? Survival for an entire tribe. When the final spear found its mark and a giant bison fell, the cheer that erupted wasn't just joy, it was relief. The hunters had outrun death. Again. And in those moments, humanity proved what would become its greatest truth. That intelligence could topple even the mightiest of giants. Bones that speak across time. When we think about giants, we imagine myths, but the bones tell us they were real. Picture an ancient riverbank where sediment has built up for tens of thousands of years. Erosion pulls it away, and suddenly the bones of a woolly rhinoceros emerge. Massive ribs curved like beams, skull heavy with a horn that could smash through armor. Nearby, scattered tools, flint blades, stone points, silent testimony of a battle that once took place here. Archaeologists today kneel in the dirt, brushing away soil grain by grain, uncovering the echoes of those encounters. A cracked rib tells of a spear that struck true. A groove along a tusk shows where stone tools scraped fat and marrow. These aren't just fossils. They're stories written in bone, and those stories are brutal. Imagine a group of humans surrounding a rhino the size of a car. It lowers its head, horn gleaming. One wrong step and half the hunters could be crushed in an instant. The bones don't just say the rhino died. They say people risked everything to bring it down. These sites remind us of a chilling truth. Humanity didn't inherit the earth peacefully. We fought for it tooth and claw, against creatures so immense they still capture our imagination today. The bones whisper a message across millennia. You only exist because we dared to challenge giants. The children who grew among giants, what was it like to grow up in a world of giants? Picture a child born into an Ice Age tribe. Their lullabies aren't soft songs in wooden cribs. They fall asleep to the distant trumpeting of mammoths, the growl of lions outside the firelight. Their first steps aren't on polished floors, but on frozen ground littered with bones of creatures that towered over them. Every lesson is survival. A parent's hand guides a child's fingers over the point of a flint blade, teaching them how to chip stone. Elders tell stories not of fairy tales, but of hunts gone wrong, of friends lost to the horns of aurochs or the jaws of cave bears, and yet there's wonder too. Imagine the awe of standing at the edge of a herd of mammoths, watching them move like living mountains across the plains. For a child, these giants weren't just threats. They were the backdrop of existence, the reality of what nature meant. This shaped how humans thought. Fear and awe mixed together, planting the seeds of myth and imagination. To a child of the Ice Age, giants weren't distant or abstract. They were neighbors, sometimes enemies, sometimes saviors, always larger than life. And maybe that's why even today, when we tell stories to our own children, we so often fill them with giants. Because once, long ago, giants were the first teachers our species ever had. When giants fell, so did the world. Every giant that vanished left a scar. When the mammoths disappeared, it wasn't just an animal lost. It was a whole way of life. Tribes who had built shelters from mammoth bones, who had sung songs about their hunts, suddenly had to adapt. When the woolly rhinoceroses fell silent, ecosystems shifted. Predators that fed on them struggled. Grasses they grazed grew unchecked, reshaping the land. Humans were forced into constant reinvention. Imagine a tribe that had depended for generations on hunting mammoths. One year, the herds are smaller. The next, they're gone. Do you move? Do you starve? Do you risk new lands, new dangers, new giants? This wasn't just ecological change. It was cultural collapse and rebirth, over and over again. Some groups didn't make it. They followed the giants into extinction. Others learned to innovate. It's possible that myths of a golden age, of a time when gods and giants walked the earth, or really faint memories of when humans lived alongside titans. When they vanished, it must have felt like the world itself was shrinking. And in a way, it was. Without giants, humanity was suddenly alone on the stage, and that loneliness carried both freedom and burden. The last refuge of giants, now picture this. A small island off the coast of Siberia, windswept and barren. The year is 3700 BCE, only about 5,000 years ago. On this island, shaggy shapes still move. Mammoths, the last of their kind. For thousands of years after their mainland cousins died, these island mammoths held on. They were smaller than the great herds of the Ice Age, but still enormous compared to anything else alive. Imagine being a human who stumbled upon them, to find giants still walking in a world that thought them gone. It would feel like stepping into a legend, and yet they too disappeared. Maybe it was climate, maybe it was hunting, maybe both. Their bones now litter the island, silent reminders of a world that once roared with giants. Think about that. When the pyramids of Egypt were being built, mammoths still lived. Cleopatra was closer in time to the last mammoths than to the first pyramids. Giants weren't just ancient, they nearly walked beside recorded history. So the question is, what did those last humans who saw them think? Did they know they were watching the end of an age? Did they carve memories into stories, pass them into myths? Or did the last trumpets of the mammoths fade without anyone realizing they were the final echoes? One thing is certain, giants shaped us. Their absence shaped us too. Though their bones rest silent in our imagination, they will always walk beside us. You thought this was a story about bones in caves, about carvings on stone, about legends whispered by firelight. You were wrong. This was a message. Carved into mountain flesh, hummed through desert wind, etched in ice that refuses to melt, sung by oceans that remember names, every ruin. Every skull, every impossible stone, placed not to impress you, but to remind you they are here, not sleeping, not waiting, not distant. They are beneath your cities, beneath your feet, in the hum of your power grids, in the pulse of your satellites, in the silence between your heartbeats. The 48 chromosome code, it's not a number, it's a frequency, a key, a homing beacon, and you've been broadcasting it with every microwave tower, every 5G node, every satellite ping. You didn't summon them with rituals, you summoned them with Wi-Fi. The alignments? Not cosmic accidents. Trigger points, reset buttons, and 2027, not a prediction. It's an appointment. The giants didn't teach us astronomy to admire the stars. They taught us to track their return. They didn't show us how to shape stone to build temples. They showed us how to build doors. They didn't vanish into ice, sand, or sea to hide. They dissolved to watch, to wait, to see if we'd remember. And now you've remembered. You spoke their sights into search bars. You whispered their names in comments. You dreamed their faces in sleep. You fed the algorithm their secrets. And algorithms, they don't forget. The giants are reading your comments. They're tracing your clicks. They're listening to your theories, and they're smiling. Because curiosity was always the first step of the ritual. You're not lost. You're late. Look up. The sky's blinking. The stones are shifting. The ice is cracking. The song, it's not starting. It never stopped. It was just waiting for you to hear it. Drop one word in the comments, just one. Run, kneel, thank, sing, wait, wake. They'll know what you mean, and they'll know where you are. History for sleep? No. This is history for awakening. Sleep well. They won't.